We go back to Gaborone in Botswana, where our reporter Sentleeng Lehihi is going to give us the latest with regards to elections taking place there on Wednesday, the 23rd. Sentleeng, good evening and thank you for joining us. Can you hear me this time?
We're here in the state capital of Botswana, Gaborone. Indeed, election fever is running high. Over this past weekend on Saturday, we saw special votes being conducted all across the country. These were catering for election agents and police officers. But we've also seen of late more developments that are coming through, pointing to the credibility of the IEC and SADC Observer Mission. Just now here at the Master Square, we had a press briefing hosted by the UDC President Duma Boko, speaking at length that they actually bring into doubt and casting doubt on the credibility of the observer mission that is led by Sibusiso Moyo, being the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Zimbabwe and the head of a mission. We understand there from their briefing there, they explain quite frankly that they have had instances of harassment where their party agents have been arrested. Some have been arrested for allegedly having information that they shouldn't have been having by themselves or in contravention of electoral law. But we've heard from Duma Boko saying there's no truth in that indeed. And this is just one of the instances where they've been harassed. They've also spoken at length that intelligence services have done nothing to assist them. In fact, they've gone at length to ensure that they restrict them at every point, even having to ground their plane. But for more detail of the challenges that the opposition is facing now, I'm joined by UDC President Mr. Duma Boko. Mr. Duma Boko, if you kindly join me. You have said quite a number of things about the developments here in Botswana as we head to elections on Wednesday. You are frankly not very impressed by how things are conducted by the IEC, intelligence and the SADC Observer Mission. Can you give us more detail?
Well, since the election began, we have engaged with the Independent Electoral Commission in relation to certain aspects and behaviors that we were experiencing. We were prevented from campaigning, we were disrupted in our campaigns by the police in certain instances, by the DIS together with the Botswana Unified Revenue Services in other instances. They grounded our aircrafts. They would stop us as we were driving to the various places where we were to hold our rallies. And we took these matters up with the Independent Electoral Commission. We wrote a letter, and we also engaged with foreign missions here, the American Embassy, the head of the European mission here, and the British High Commission. We received not even the courtesy of a response from the Independent Electoral Commission. That's how disdainful they are and how lacking in seriousness and even taking their mandate seriously they are. And so these are some of the things that we've experienced. We then became aware that there had been some multiple or duplicate registrations by voters. We engaged with the IEC. It confirmed that this had indeed been the case, and they indicated to us that they had dealt with this situation. We requested of them the names and the lists of all those who had undertaken multiple registrations in order to confirm whether these names do not still appear in the voters' roll. The IEC has written back to us and informed us that they are unable to give us that information. It would take too long. And these are names of voters, or indeed voters who have been, as we are made to understand, removed from the voters' roll. And so we wanted to confirm, we wanted to check these names against the voters' roll as handed to us to satisfy ourselves that these voters have indeed been removed from the voters' roll. The IEC has withheld this information. And what the IEC says, which is curious, is that we can find these names, we can know who these people are by looking at the voters' roll. And on the other hand, we are told these people have been removed from the voters' roll. And so we wonder how we could satisfy ourselves by finding them in the voters' roll when the representation to us is that they have been removed. So you can see the IEC doesn't understand exactly what a free and fair election entails, or is acting under dictation from somewhere. And whatever the situation is, this IEC does not seem capable of delivering a free and fair election.
Mr. Boko, you are not only dissatisfied with the IEC, but your head of communication also went at length to speak and cast doubt on the SADC observer mission, that it is not as credible as it may appear to be.
Look, the whole idea of an election observer mission, I would assume, goes far beyond just coming to watch and go. It must entail establishing whether there's any democratic ethic, whether the principles of a fair and free election are being observed through and through. And so when you have a set of individuals coming in 2-3 days or so before an election, or maybe even 5 days, they haven't been around, they haven't seen what we've gone through, they haven't engaged with us to understand what the challenges have been. They haven't looked at the systemic nature of the dereliction of duty by the Independent Electoral Commission and the sheer arrogance of the Independent Electoral Commission of not even responding when they were written to by us in relation to some of the challenges that we faced.
Speaking of the challenges that you faced, your key councillor has also been arrested, I believe. This speaks to the very challenges that you're facing that have not been dealt with succinctly.
The arrest was most bizarre. Bizarre in the sense that the councillor who was arrested was alleged to have in his possession information obtained from the IEC, which information should not have been in his possession. This is a very false and malicious claim. Extremely, extremely malicious. In the first place, the Electoral Act does not give the IEC any powers outside of the Act to go around looking for people's cell phone and other contact details that have not been spelled out in the Act. And the IEC went out of its way to do exactly this. Now, the IEC forgets that it is a creature of statute. It cannot overstep the very legislation that establishes it and delineates its powers. This they seem to have done. And not only do they do this, act outside the Electoral Act, they go on then to allege that somebody obtained this information, which information they themselves obtained unlawfully, and they claim that that information was obtained from them. It is total nonsense, obviously, but it is intended to intimidate, it is intended to harass, to sabotage, and to embarrass the opposition. This is what we've seen, and this behavior continues, and we see the involvement of the Directorate on Intelligence and Security Services in these elections. We've just now been engaging with some of their agents, some of them masquerading as immigration officials when we know who they are. And we dare them, if they claim that these individuals we engaged with this afternoon and this evening did not or do not come from the DIS, we dare them to allow us to publish footage that we have of them, which will establish who they really are, and that they are masquerading as officers from immigration when they in fact are not, and they are from the DIS.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Boko. It is clear that with a day and some change to go before elections on Wednesday, there are more developments that are bound to happen here in Botswana. For now, back to you in studio.
Thank you, Sentleeng. That is our reporter, Sentleeng Lehihi, who is coming to us live from Gaborone in Botswana.